Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the GallowgateShots Podcast for a very special episode today. I am joined by Graeme Bailey, who is now part, same as us, as the 90-Minute Football Network. How are you doing, Graeme? Everything good from your side?
Yeah, champion. Cheers for having me on.
That's no problem whatsoever. Just to give people a bit of a scenario of what's happened. I would say the last handful of hours, we've thrown this podcast together there. Obviously on the back of the article which you've put out in relation to Newcastle managerial choices. I think we'll have to remember currently at this moment in time that Steve Bruce, as far as we know, he's still employed by the football club. And there has been a few debates over the last 24, 48 hours in relation to how he's been treated by the current ownership since that handover period. Hasn't really been given any assurances that he's keeping his job. Also hasn't been sacked yet. What's your opinion on that, first of all?
Yeah, I was in the press conference last week when Steve had a bit of a bite back at us, as the journalists who ran the story, and I think it was pretty carpeted amongst all the journalists. We'd all been given pretty similar information that he wasn't part of their long-term future, and neither is Lee Charnley. I think it's difficult for all involved because the process, I think they envisaged it being a bit smoother. Maybe they've had new names come into the equation of people wanting them. And we saw a bit of similar thing, didn't we, with Mark Hughes at City? And it's not the first time this has happened. It won't be the last. I think Steve's held himself well. We all know he's not going to be the manager this time next week, probably. It's just a bit of a difficult situation. I think the fans stood by him predominantly on Sunday. And yeah, it's just a difficult situation where there's no point. Is there any point in appointing Graeme Jones interim for a matter of days when the managers they want are currently out of work? So it is doable. And I think it was mainly due to, Ramayan not be able to make it until late in the weekend. I think if he made it in a bit earlier, it might be a bit possible to do something. But, I think it's been a bit of a struggle for Steve Bruce. You have to feel for him, but I think they've done as well as can be expected, really. Given how quickly it all came together very quickly. We know they've been talking to people for months, but it all came on them very suddenly.
I think, like you just said there, it looks like it's going to have to go through a chain in regards to these decisions now, because we'll have three owners splitting ownership there, obviously with PIF having 80% of that, but all three have representation in the Northeast now. Like you just said, the chairman is now in the Northeast as well. Amanda Stavely, her husband, are there, and Jamie Rubin is there as well. So I think now you're probably going to see those cogs starting to turn now and these decisions being made. Your article, which was put on the 90-Minute website there earlier today, you mentioned three candidates for the managerial spot. Somebody which has been mentioned for God knows how long amongst the Newcastle fan base, somebody that Newcastle fans wanted in this time last year, is Eddie Howe, and he is one of the names on the list. So can you fill in a little bit there in regards to the background of Eddie Howe, obviously, things like that?
Yeah. Obviously, with Eddie, he obviously hasn't been in work since leaving Bournemouth during their relegation. He was very close to getting the Celtic job in the summer. It didn't transpire. There's various things with coaches in the background, which I don't really think will be an issue with Newcastle. And I think it's a very interesting shortlist. We've got a young Brit, we've got a young foreigner, we've got an experienced foreigner. It's very, very different. I think they all like to play good football. With Eddie Howe, it's a strange one for me personally. And this is only my opinion, I'm not sure whether he warrants being next to Fonseca and Favre in terms of his CV. I think he's got a bit to prove, and that's just for me regarding Newcastle. You have to regard Newcastle as the top 10, even top 16. I know they're not there yet, but in terms of this appointment, that's what you have to regard them as. And obviously, he's been appointed to keep them up as well, and he doesn't have a great track record of keeping teams in the top flight. So he does play good football. I think it would be a little bit of a gamble. He has been linked to Arsenal as well in the past. He plays great football, but he has taken the team down. For me, I'd be aiming slightly higher, and obviously they have the shortlist. But hey, Eddie Howe has wonderful reputation. He was very strongly with England, wasn't he? When Allardyce went, etc. So he is held in very high regard, and I do know that the references he's been getting from within the game have been glowing. And obviously, the new owners are touching base with a lot of people around football, gauging opinions, etc. And Harry Redknapp, one of those, he's very keen on him. He thinks he's a superstar. So they are doing the homework.
Yeah, I think one of the things that fans have been attracted to from Eddie Howe is obviously most likely age and ambition. Hopefully that he's got some sort of drive there to push his career even further. Great opportunity to prove that you can get Newcastle out of this relegation fight and take over the helm going forward in this project. But we've seen videos when he was a Bournemouth manager where he's been mic'd up and doing the training sessions then, and it's just a joy to see those sort of things and how involved he is within those training sessions as well. Something which we've never really witnessed at Newcastle United. Whether or not that's managerial choices or club choices, we'll never know. Moving on to the next candidate, so a Portuguese man. So this is the one which you said a younger, less experienced candidate on this one. He was linked with the Spurs job, so it's Fonseca, linked with the Spurs job in the summer, and it looks like he's been trying to push for a move to the Premier League for a little while now.
Yeah, well, he's been a target for a lot of Premier League clubs. Everton were very, very keen. He was offered the Tottenham job. He agreed terms on the Tottenham job. That's how much how highly regarded he is. Fabio Patrici wanted him to be the next manager. There was issues a bit with taxes, a bit with how he wanted his teams to play. He's a very attack-minded coach, and I think his whole demeanor just suits Newcastle. I was reading up a bit about him before about the about his appointment, and there was a quote where he says, "All my teams will have the attention to never defend against the bigger teams. They'll always send his teams out to attack in their own box." He's not negative, and I think that will appeal to Newcastle. He's coming in after being at Roma. He did a wonderful job at Shakhtar. I know everyone says, "Oh, everyone does a wonderful job at Shakhtar." He followed Lucescu after 12 years and won league titles. He did a very good job. He's only 48, and he turned down Palace as well. So this is a guy who's been held in very high regard this summer. For me, I think he ticks all the boxes at the moment. For me, in my personal opinion, I think he's the big name. I know he's diligent. He's done his homework on Newcastle. He really wants this job, and at 48, I think he's the ideal age as well. And the fact that he's been at Roma, Shakhtar, and Porto, he's handled these big names. He's got the contacts, which again I do worry about. If in January you're going for some big name foreign players in January, will they know who Eddie Howe is? Well, I think they will know Paulo Fonseca having with his contacts. For me, I think he's the dark horse. I think he ticks a lot of boxes here. He's very impressive, but all three in their own different rights are impressive. I think some people have been a little bit shallow in terms of disrespect to the three of them. If you actually dig in deep to all three candidates who we believe have interviews today, they are very impressive in their own right. And for me, Fonseca the most impressive.
You mentioned the likes of Roma and Porto there. It's two clubs there that their minimum goal really is getting that European football spot as well each season. So he's used to being targeted quite heavily as well. So he's not going to be coming in and thinking, "Oh, your only goal here is to survive every season," something which we have been used to as a football club. The ambition is there, and you would hope that he does have that caliber there to push on higher up the likes of the Premier League. I'm talking about Europe here, which is a pipe dream. Of course it is.
It's handling that though, Chris, isn't it? It's handling that that size of club. We know how big Newcastle are, of course we do. It's a thing. Another thing that worries me about Eddie Howe. He's coming from Bournemouth. He's coming from a club who was smaller than my own loved Middlesbrough. And we want him to take over at Newcastle.
It's a huge jump when you think about it.
Fonseca is Shakhtar, Porto, and Roma. These are all these. That's where Newcastle want to be and where they should be. But he's been in charge of that caliber of team, as has the other candidate Favre, who we'll talk about in a minute.
Yeah. So moving on to the third and final candidate. This is one which you said at the very start. This is the more experienced managerial here. So once again, just give a rundown in regards to this candidate.
Just point out to the listeners that both Fonseca and Favre both speak English, I'm told. So we won't have any Marcelo Bielsa situation. Going through translator, which is an interesting press conference when we have to do that with him. Favre, he's Swiss. He's been a lot of his time in the Bundesliga with Hertha Berlin, Mönchengladbach, also time in Nice recently, who are becoming bigger with Jim Ratcliffe's money. But most recently, Borussia Dortmund. which is hugely impressive. He left there in 2020, I believe it was.
Mm.
But you in recent times, if you're appointed Borussia Dortmund manager, you know there's something about you. And he's more of a you can almost say a bit of the Bobby Robson in him, I guess. 63. Willie, he's a mystery one. He plays good football. He's a wonderful tactician, and for me, I think it's between him and Fonseca. For me, obviously, I've alluded to that. I think it's between these are two huge names in European football. They really are. I know Favre, we probably know even less about than Fonseca because we've seen Fonseca linked to Spurs. We've read about him all summer, haven't we? Favre is one that doesn't have the reputation maybe in England, but he really does in Europe. He's a huge figure in Europe, and I think the fans would love him as well. I think I quite like the shortlist, Kris. I think the more you think about it, I think it makes sense, and it's nice that I think they've actually put some thought into it, and I think that's a positive for them. They obviously want to get it right, and I think Favre is really interesting. I wouldn't, I think the fans. As you said, I think Eddie Howe has the benefit of knowing him and knowing his football, but these other two, especially Favre, the footballer player, can be spectacular.
I think going back to Eddie Howe, just because you mentioned him, I think when Newcastle were still under Mike Ashley ownership, that would most likely be the appointment that the club would probably look at, somebody who's out of work, somebody that doesn't have that big name around them. The cheaper option, you would argue, really, to be honest with you. But now, like you said, it looks like there has been finally some thought put into the likes of a managerial appointment, and the new owners have taken the time. I know it's only been just over a week now, but they have taken the time rather than just rushing and sacking Bruce there when they first come in. Do you think that's a huge factor there, that they want the right person before they go make that decision?
Yeah, very much so. And I would also let listeners know the interviews taking place at the very least the second interviews. They've been in talks last week as well. They've already spoken to these candidates. That isn't to say there can't be someone else in the woodwork who comes out. They're being offered players and managers on a daily basis, but I don't think they're being too swayed from that. So, from my information, is these three are being interviewed today. And we could have an appointment before we finish the podcast. We could be on Friday. I think this week it will happen. But yeah, I think it all bodes well, and it's a tough one for the new owners because they're still getting used to each other. They've obviously been in business together for a long time, but they've barely been in the same room together at any point. We got the Reuben brothers, the Staveleys, and Piff, and we've got to see what they agree on. Hopefully, they all are unanimous in their decision. It'll make life a lot easier, won't it? But I guess this will also tell us who's making that final decision, Kris, because we're still not quite sure. But Piff are going to have that final decision. Al Ryan will have that say, but I'm sure they're hoping for everyone agrees on it. They don't want to set off where they're all hopefully not voting for one candidate each, because that would make life very difficult. But we don't want the voting like the Pope, where we're waiting for that white smoke at the top of the Gallowgate to see who's got the job.
Yeah, but like I said, it's personally I wanted Bruce sacked as soon as the new management came over. But then when I took a step back and thought, right, okay, well, that's going to leave you without a manager, without any coaches, and it's going to be Graeme Jones there by himself. Because as far as I understand, he came to Newcastle under the idea, if Steve Bruce and the coaching staff were to be dismissed of the roles, then he would still stay at the club. I'm not sure if that is still the case, if it would be a case where once again they would have to pay Graeme Jones off as well, or if he would be offered an opportunity to stay on as a coach.
I suspect, I haven't really talked in detail to my source about Graeme Jones's future. I'd be surprised if they let him go. He's got that tie to the fans. He's a high caliber coach. He's just spent the summer with England. He'll be in demand. So I think the new manager, a bit like maybe Ancelotti did at Everton, where he kept people around. I'd be very surprised if Jones wasn't part of any new setup. Maybe, and it sounds surprising, if Eddie Howe got the job, he's least likely to be involved, because Howe knows his English staff, etc. He'll want to bring his own in. I suspect if it was Fonseca or Favre, that he would be involved.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's not to say he wouldn't be under Howe, but obviously Howe would know all about him anyway, and he'd be able to make a quick decision on whether he wanted to be with him or not.
Yeah, that makes sense, to be fair. If one of the two foreign managers come in, that keeping Graeme Jones there, obviously he's well aware of the players and the things that they can and can't do, and it might be a great transition, obviously, for him to be part of that setup as well. In relation to the managerial appointment, something which we discussed on our podcast yesterday was the manager that comes in. Will this be an interim manager sort of role, or is it a case where you are the head coach of this football club?
Again, I think there's a difference between the foreigners. If Paulo Fonseca or Favre come in, they're obviously the first job is to keep Newcastle up.
Mm.
And I imagine in all three contracts there will be a release clause that if both parties want a parting of the ways come the end of the season, it will be in there. That's just logistical what you do in the Premier League now with any manager, you know.
You would imagine it would be a huge
Yeah.
bonus on the back of that as well if they were to keep the club up.
Yeah, very much so. But I think in terms of Fonseca especially, I know from people close to him that he sees this as a long-term project. He knows what this club is about. He sees the ambition. That's why he wants it. You know, you this is a guy who could have been in charge of Tottenham now, and so if Newcastle appointing someone on the level of Tottenham, I think that's a good appointment. That's why you should. That's the and even to attract a manager of that caliber is a huge plus point. So I think for those two, it's long term. Eddie Howe, I think he'd be on a tighter rein, if I'm being honest. And I think they would probably, you know, it would be a 2 or 3 year, but with a clause in there to see how they perform. Is he, you know, if they finish, and I know the all important thing is staying up, but they don't just want to be scraping. Obviously, you know, if we offered you fourth and bottom now, clearly you would take that.
But of course you would, yeah.
Let's see what happens in January because we are expecting a few incomings. Well, a fair few.
Yeah, so I think just to wrap it up, I think my preference out of those three managers, which you had mentioned, asked us this question a month ago, then my answer is completely different. It's going to be Eddie Howe all day long, a couple of months back. But I think now it's going to be Fonseca for me. I think obviously just discussing this, and obviously the rumours which have been going across on social media in the last handful of hours, I think he does seem like a candidate which is very high and very, very top of the list for the new owners. And like you said, the experience and working under the pressure and goals of the ownerships of those clubs that he's been at, it's only going to be work in his favour. It's going to be a huge attribute to taking over this project at Newcastle United.
Yeah, he's had foreign ownership. He had it at Roma. There's people coming in and out there, and I think I say he ticks so many boxes. The parallels he has. He's only 48. He knows Premier League football, and the fact that I said, and we keep going back to the point that Tottenham and Everton both wanted him. I think that's a very good barometer of his caliber. And there's no guarantees here, but I think, you know, I know for a fact he's done a lot of homework. He knows what he wants in January. He's got very good contacts abroad. And I just think for me, he ticks boxes short term and long term, Chris. That's the thing with him.
Yeah.
I think more so than the other two. I think he ticks the boxes for you to keep you up and then to take the project on to where it needs to be.
Yeah, no, great, mate. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon there. I'm sure this will come in handy to a lot of Newcastle United fans who don't know the background of these managers that are on the shortlist. So once again, thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.
No problems. Take care, guys.
Cheers, mate.